Let's see how to solve this shopping cart challenge. I'm going to go ahead and build this bot from scratch so you can kind of see my thought process as I do this as well as you are. So the first step obviously is to create a new task bot, and I'll call this one shopping list and create that. Now looking at the site that we're going to be automating here, the process that we have is entering in an item in the shopping list and then clicking Add Item. Once we've got all of those items added to the shopping list, we do need to acknowledge our order by clicking Yes and then clicking Submit Order. Now thinking about this, we've got a source file here, the Download Favorite Foods spreadsheet. So be sure and download that and save that somewhere where you can find it. I've saved mine in a C bots folder. I like to keep that there just for files for my automations. And so it's right here. And if I open up this file, I can see that I've got two columns with headers with the information that we need. And we've got 7 different rows here with everyone's favorite foods and their names. The column that we need to work with here is really just this favorite food column. We don't really have to worry about the family member column so much because this is where we're going to be getting the information for our shopping list. So we'll be entering in that value here, clicking Add Item. Now if we think about this in our bot, we can actually break this up into 4 separate little pieces. And I'm going to use the step action to kind of separate those different pieces in my automation so that I can keep track of what I'm doing and also document what I'm doing as well. So I've got my 4 step actions in place here. And logically, if we think about this, the first step is to open our CSV file and open our browser. So I'm just going to type that in, open CSV file in browser. And for our second step, this is where we're going to be looping through that CSV file. So I'll just put in loop through CSV there. The third step is where we accept those terms and submit on that website. So I'll just put that in here. Accept terms and submit. And then this last action is where we would close everything. But I'm just going to close the CSV file here because in these challenge pages, we need to have that browser left open so that we can see the amount of time that it took for our automation to run. All right, so we've got our 4 steps in place. And this, again, just kind of helps organize our automation. We know what to put in each one of these different steps. The actions for opening the CSV in the browser go here, and so on and so forth. So it's a lot easier to kind of think through things. So let's jump in, and the first thing we need to do is open up our CSV file, and I'm going to use the CSV text package to do this. I could use the Excel Advanced package as well, but the CSV text does not require that Excel is installed on your computer, and also is a bit faster than the Excel package. Now for the session name, I'm going to leave this as default for this demonstration, but your Center of Excellence may have a different naming scheme that they want you to use for this session name, so follow their lead, not mine. For the file path, since this file is on my C drive, I'm going to choose desktop file. You can think of this as it is on my desktop or laptop. And I'm going to browse over to my bots folder and choose that shopping list CSV and open that up. We saw that this file does contain a header, so I can leave that checked. One thing that wasn't clear here is what the delimiter is. Now you could guess, but sometimes that's not the best idea. Instead, I'm going to right-click on that CSV file and open it up in Notepad, or Notepad++ in this case. And I can see that I've got a delimiter of a comma that goes between each one of these columns. Now this trick only works with CSV files. You can't do this with an Excel and display anything that makes sense. But we can also see here in Notepad++ that this encoding of the file is a UTF-8 encoding. So that's good to know because we will be asked that here at the bottom of the open action. So for our delimiter, we can leave that as comma, so that's a good sign. I'm going to tick both of these trim leading spaces and trim trailing spaces boxes because there's very few things that are more frustrating to try to figure out why a value with a space at the end doesn't equal a value without the space at the end. It gets really, really troublesome. So most of the time, I do tick both of those boxes to ensure that I have a little bit more data cleanliness. And the encoding is UTF-8, so I can leave that as is. That gets our file open. The next thing we need to do is we need to open up our browser. So I'm going to use a browser open. And I'm going to be opening this up in a new window. It's always a good thing to have these as two separate windows like this, rather than trying to fiddle with tabs and stuff like that. So do open these things up in a new window. And it's also best practice to choose the specific browser you want to use here. Because if you leave that as default browser, if you run this on another computer that does not have the same browser as you as the default, then your automation is not going to work correctly. Now for the link to open, I'm going to copy this from the page. Your link may be a bit different than what I'm using here, but it should work the same way. And there we go. Now at this point, if you're following along and you have not opened up that second browser window, you can just go ahead and run this automation as is, and that will open up that separate browser window for you. Now looking at the second step, this is where we're going to be looping through that CSV file. The name of the step just kind of implies what we're going to be doing next, and that is we're going to be adding a loop action into that step. And this loop, for the iterator, we're going to be looping through each row in that CSV text. For the session name, if you did change it, go ahead and change it here as well. I did not, so I'm going to leave this as default. And then for the assign the current row to a variable, we need somewhere to store that row of data as we process it, because we're going to be reading this row by row by row by row like this. And we need that record variable to hold that value. We can also use multiple values if we wanted to do that way as well. But in this case, we'll use a record variable just so that you can see how to use them. So I'm going to hit that create variable widget, and the name is fine, CSV text row, great. It's very explanatory to what we want, but I am going to put a lowercase r at the very beginning of the name. That's what we do here in training to kind of indicate what type of variable that we're working with. So we can see at a glance with our CSV text row is a record. And we can create and select that. Now, once we've got that loop set up like this, we need to start putting the information into the web form, specifically this text box. And after we put that value in the text box, we'll click on this Add Item button. And to do that, we're going to be using the recorder capture action. And the recorder capture is what allows us to interact with the user interface. So for the window here, I'm going to choose Browser. Browser works with Chrome and Edge, the new version of Edge that's Chromium based. If you're working with any other browser, use Application. Interestingly, also, Chrome can be done through Application as well. So it's up to you on what you want to do, but generally speaking, if I'm using Chrome browser, I'm going to use the browser option. Need to refresh my windows so I can see what windows are open. And make sure you don't try to automate your control room. I'm going to choose shopping list here. And then I'm going to hit that capture object. Notice it switches me over to that other screen. And that's exactly what I want here. For the shopping list, I'm going to wait until I get that red outline around the text box like I have here, and click once. And that has recorded the information about this text box so that we can get back to it and do some action on it. And the action that we want to take on that object is to set the text into it. I'm going to go down here now and select under keystrokes. I'm going to hit this little widget at the end that says insert a value. It's the X in parenthesis. And from that list, I'll choose my record variable. And from that record variable, I need to choose which column that I want, either family member or favorite food. And in this case, it is the favorite food that I want. I really don't need the family member information. So I will copy and paste that into the column name for the record. I do use the names whenever possible. That way, if the columns of this Excel document or CSV file get rearranged, I'm not surprised, because if I did that by index, that's the specific column. And if someone rearranged the columns, I would be in trouble. So let's go ahead and hit this yes insert. And we are good to go with that favorite food. Now I'm going to add another recorder capture right below this. Choose my browser window. Choose my previously selected shopping list again. And capture object one more time. Move over the add item until it has that red highlight around it, and then click. You can see we did capture that button. And the action that we want to take on this object is click. And that's what we have here to enter in those items into the shopping list. Now, if you want to, you can run the automation at this point. It will go and enter in each one of those items into the shopping list, and the shopping list items will be shown down here. I'm going to go ahead and soldier forward and see if we can finish off this automation. And the next step we've got here is the accept terms and submit. And again, looking back at this, that means I need to have the automation click this yes button and then click the submit order now that I've gotten all of those items done in the shopping list. So to do that, I'm just going to add in 2 more recorder captures. For this first one, again, I'll choose that browser window and the shopping list previously selected. And then when I hit the capture object, I'm going to float over the dot for the radio button here for the yes and click. And the action I want to take on this object, it's up to you on what you want to do. You can actually use a click or even a left click here. but I'm going to use the select option, and that will select this item. One more recorder capture. Again, select browser, shopping list, capture object, and I'm going to move to my submit order button, wait for the red highlight, and click. And the action to take on this one is a click. Now, what's the difference between a click and a left click? Well, a click actually talks directly to the button, says, hey, Mr. Button, I want you to do what you would do if I were to actually click on you. So the mouse pointer doesn't move, it just kind of works. Now, if click doesn't work for some reason, that's where left click kind of comes into play. Left click actually moves your mouse pointer to the object and simulates the mouse button being clicked. So one of those two is going to work in your automation. But best practice is, let's start with click. All right, that takes us down to this last step, and we've got the close CSV. So I'm going to go back to the CSV text package and drag a close action in here. Again, if you had changed your session name previously, you'll need to change it here. And we are done with this automation. Now, before I test this out, I do need to close this other window. I don't want to have two windows with the same title open at the same time. That can cause some weirdness. And once you've got this done, let's go ahead and run this, and let's see what happens. All right, the bot is starting. New web page is open. Items are being added to that shopping list. We acknowledge the order, and we're done. We have a 100% accuracy. That is the important measure here. Got it done in 6.7 seconds. Not so important. Again, we want to focus on that accuracy first. And let's see if you can do as well as what we've got here. So thanks for watching, and go be great.